a packed stadium at Rock Creek Park. A rising American star locked in a dogfight with a former world number one. And then, in an instant, everything changes. Ashlyn Krueger goes down, clutching her ankle, and the entire complexion of the Mubadala DC Open shifts. Naomi Osaka, the four-time Grand Slam champion trying to rebuild her career on hard courts, watches her opponent battle through visible pain for nearly an hour before the inevitable happens. This is the story of a match that started as a genuine 50-50 battle and ended in heartbreak, and what it means for both players as the rest of the tournament unfolds. Stick around, because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why this result has tennis fans buzzing, why Osaka herself admitted she was stunned by what she witnessed, and what comes next for both competitors. To understand why this match mattered so much, you have to go back and look at where both players stood heading into that Wednesday night in Washington, D.C. Naomi Osaka has spent the better part of 2 years trying to climb back to the level that once made her one of the most dominant players in the sport. A four-time major champion, Osaka built her legacy on hard courts, capturing all 4 of her Grand Slam titles on that surface. But her return to the tour after a career hiatus has been anything but smooth. Hard-court success in particular has eluded her, and heading into this tournament, she had not lifted a hard-court title since her Australian Open triumph years earlier, a drought stretching beyond 5 years for a player of her caliber. Still, the signs of resurgence were unmistakable. Osaka arrived in Washington fresh off an impressive stretch that included a run to the final in Bad Homburg and a quarterfinal appearance at Wimbledon, her best showing at the All-England club in years. Ranked 13th in the world, she was seated 3rd in the nation's capital, and expectations were rising that she could finally translate her grass-court form into consistent hard-court results. But Washington has historically been an unkind stop for her. In her previous appearances at the event, she had never advanced past the second round, both times falling to unseeded opponents. That history added an extra layer of tension to her second-round matchup. On the other side of the net stood Ashlyn Krueger, a 22-year-old American who had quietly put together one of the most compelling stories of the season. Entering play as a wild card, Krueger had tumbled down the rankings earlier in the year, falling outside the top 100 by June. What followed was a remarkable turnaround. She strung together 22 wins in 29 matches, captured a title on grass in Ilkley, and then went on an extended run through qualifying all the way to the 4th round at Wimbledon, by far the best Grand Slam result of her career. That 7-match stretch across 13 days showcased both her physical resilience and her improving all-around game, built around a powerful, aggressive style that had begun to trouble even the tour's more established names. The two players were not strangers. Their only previous meeting had come roughly 2 years earlier at a hard-court event in Cincinnati, where Krueger, then ranked 65th in the world, upset Osaka in 3 tightly contested sets. That result lingered in the background heading into Washington, giving Krueger a psychological edge even as the betting markets installed Osaka as a heavy favorite. Analysts noted that Krueger's serve remained something of a liability, with a tendency toward double faults, but her firepower off the ground and her evident fitness after the Wimbledon marathon made her a live underdog. Osaka, meanwhile, was viewed as short on match toughness after a lighter competitive schedule in the weeks prior, a factor several observers flagged as a potential opening for Krueger to exploit. Nobody expecting a routine contest, and nobody could have predicted just how the match would ultimately be decided. Not by a clean, hard-fought victory, but by the kind of gutting circumstance that no player or fan ever wants to see unfold on a tennis court. As the players walked out under the lights, the stage was set for a genuine test of both games. What followed instead became a story about grit, pain, and the unpredictable, sometimes cruel nature of professional sport. From the opening games, it was clear this was not going to be a straightforward evening for either competitor. Krueger came out aggressive, leaning into the powerful ground strokes that had carried her through her breakout summer, while Osaka looked to control rallies with her trademark power and depth. The first set quickly tilted in Osaka's favor as she built a commanding lead, moving out to 4-1. It was during this stretch, with Osaka firmly in control, that the first signs of trouble appeared for Krueger. Down 4 games to 1, Krueger called for a medical timeout, a moment that immediately shifted the tone of the match. Trainers moved onto the court to examine her, working on what would later be confirmed as an issue with her right foot and ankle. For several tense minutes, the outcome of the entire match hung in the balance. Would Krueger be able to continue, or would this be an abrupt, anticlimactic end to a contest that had barely gotten started? After treatment, Krueger elected to press on, walking gingerly back to the baseline as play resumed. What followed was one of the more remarkable displays of competitive grit fans had seen on tour this season. Despite the visible discomfort and clearly altered movement, Krueger continued to fight, refusing to simply hand over the set without a battle. She won a handful of games to make the scoreline respectable, but Osaka's composure and steady hitting proved too much, and the former champion closed out the opening set by a score of 6 games to 3. Even in defeat within that set, Krueger's willingness to keep competing despite an injury that was clearly affecting her footwork left an impression on everyone watching, including her opponent across the net. The second set began with Osaka looking to press her advantage and close things out efficiently. She broke Krueger's serve early to move ahead 1 game to 0 before extending the lead to 2 games to 1, an advantage built as much on Krueger's diminished mobility as on Osaka's own play. Krueger, to her credit, continued grinding through points, using her upper body strength to generate pace even when her lower body movement was clearly compromised. She fought to hold her own serve to keep the set from getting away from her entirely, briefly narrowing the gap. But the physical toll was becoming impossible to ignore. Between points, Krueger could be seen wincing and favoring her right side, adjusting her stance to minimize pressure on the injured ankle. Osaka, for her part, later admitted she found herself both admiring her opponent's toughness and increasingly concerned about what she was witnessing from the other side of the net. As Osaka held her own serve to push the second set lead to 3 games to 1, the writing appeared to be on the wall. Krueger had given everything she had for the better part of an hour, but the ankle simply would not allow her to continue competing at the level the moment demanded. The match had reached its breaking point, and what happened next would end the contest not with a final winning shot, but with a moment far more sobering for everyone inside the arena. The moment arrived shortly after Osaka moved ahead 3 games to 1 in the second set. Ashlyn Krueger, who had spent the better part of 53 minutes fighting through what was clearly significant pain, made the difficult decision to stop. She approached the chair umpire and officially retired from the match, bringing an end to a contest that had shown flashes of real competitive fire before injury intervened. The final score stood at 6 games to 3, 3 games to 1, in Osaka's favor, a scoreline that told only part of the story of what had actually unfolded on the court that night. For Krueger, the moment was undoubtedly a gutting one. This marked her first mid-match retirement in well over a year, a rare occurrence for a player who had built her recent reputation on physical resilience, most notably during her grueling run through qualifying and into the second week at Wimbledon, just weeks earlier. To have that narrative interrupted by a sudden ankle injury, in front of a home crowd in Washington no less, added an extra layer of disappointment to an already difficult night. The full extent of the injury was not immediately confirmed in detail, but the visible limitations in her movement throughout the second set suggested it was serious enough to make continuing simply untenable, both competitively and from a health standpoint. Osaka's reaction in the moments immediately following the retirement spoke volumes about how the match had actually felt from the other side of the net. Rather than treating the result as a simple, welcome advancement to the next round, she appeared genuinely affected by what she had watched. In her on-court interview and later during a television appearance, Osaka made clear that she had not expected Krueger to be able to continue playing for as long as she did, given how serious the injury appeared. She expressed sympathy for her opponent and voiced hope for a full recovery, while also praising the competitive character Krueger displayed by continuing to play through visible pain for nearly an hour after the initial injury occurred. The scene highlighted one of the more difficult realities of professional tennis. The sport's grueling physical demands mean that career-altering injuries can strike at any moment, often with little warning, transforming what should be a celebratory step forward for one player into a moment tempered by genuine concern for another. Medical timeouts and mid-match retirements are not uncommon on tour, but the manner in which this one unfolded, a rising young talent fighting visibly through pain against a legend of the sport, in front of a home audience, during a career-best summer, gave it an emotional weight that resonated well beyond the final scoreline. As trainers and tournament staff assisted Krueger off the court, the atmosphere inside the venue shifted from anticipation to a quieter, more somber mood, even as Osaka's name went up on the scoreboard as the winner and she prepared for the next round of the tournament. In the aftermath of the retirement, attention quickly turned to what the result meant for both players moving forward. For Osaka, the win represented a meaningful milestone, her first appearance in the quarterfinals of the Washington event, a tournament that had given her trouble in prior years. It also extended an impressive run of consistency, marking her third consecutive quarterfinal appearance across tournaments, following her strong showings at Bad Homburg and Wimbledon earlier in the season. For a player working to rebuild her ranking and re-establish herself among the tour's elite, particularly on the hard courts where her most storied successes occurred, the result offered another data point suggesting her game continues trending in the right direction, even if the manner of victory left her without the full satisfaction of a clean, competitive win. Osaka was candid in her post-match comments about the broader challenges of adjusting back to hard-court tennis after an extended stretch on grass. She reflected on the transition between surfaces, noting the adjustment period that comes with switching from the low, skidding bounces of grass to the higher, more consistent bounce of hard courts. That kind of honest self-assessment has become something of a hallmark of Osaka's more recent public comments, reflecting a player who seems more comfortable discussing the process of her comeback rather than simply the results. With a place in the quarterfinals secured, she now turns her attention to preparing for her next opponent, carrying momentum from a tournament that has so far reinforced the positive trajectory established over the summer. For Krueger, the immediate outlook centers on the ankle injury and what it might mean for the remainder of her season. Her breakout run through the summer, capped by a title on grass and a career-best result at Wimbledon, had established her as one of the more intriguing young Americans on tour, a player climbing rapidly after a difficult stretch earlier in the year that had seen her ranking slip outside the top 100. An untimely injury threatens to interrupt that momentum at precisely the moment she had built real confidence and form. How quickly she's able to recover, and whether the injury proves to be a short-term setback or something more serious, will shape not only the rest of her season but potentially her position heading into the next stretch of tournaments. What this match ultimately leaves behind is a reminder of the fine margins that define professional tennis. A contest that began as a genuinely competitive, closely watched second-round matchup between a decorated former champion and a surging young contender ended instead as a story about resilience, misfortune, and the emotional complexity that can accompany even a straightforward advancement on the scoreboard. Osaka moves on, her comeback story continuing to build, while Krueger is left to regroup, recover, and look ahead to whenever she is able to return to the court. Both narratives, for very different reasons, are ones worth continuing to follow as the season moves forward.